Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sir Hunt on X on this 8th of December 2025, coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States of America. Here's hoping everyone had themselves a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Happy Victory Monday to those who celebrate. And even though we're a few days late, just want to say happy Victory Friday to all the Lions fans with a big one for Thursday night. Back in the playoff hunt for now, but still lots more football to be played. Lots of cover here tonight, and one of my loaded shows I've had. Controversial Hall of Fame inductee in the baseball world, uh, massive hit in New Zealand for the boxing world, and we live probably the most controversial fight in heavyweight championship boxing history, among many other things. And of course, two of the more uh, degrading fan bases complaining about the college playoff. I'll get to you guys here in a second because you're going to get it. But let's start with week 14 of the NFL season. Yesterday, I'm just going to divulge the big games because that's what yesterday was all about. Lots of interesting things to talk about on this particular day because now the playoff seedings are coming and it's about to get real interesting. And there's, of course, I got a lot to cover. We'll start with the AFC North tilt because I said it's going to have a default winner, and maybe the default winner was established yesterday. It was Pittsburgh stunningly going into Baltimore, and basically Aaron Rodgers turned back the clock a little bit. The read option to set up the touchdown run early. Of course, Baltimore came back, and there was a missed touchdown that the NFL later said, excuse me, they missed the call, but it doesn't matter. The point is, the Baltimore Ravens defense got carved up again, and made Aaron Rodgers look young again. And now Baltimore is just hanging on for dear life, and Pittsburgh basically controls its own destiny. And we know what happens this time with Mike Tomlin with that Steelers roster. Never had a losing record. Got an easier schedule the rest of the way. We're likely going to win the AFC North. At least they're favored right now. Keyword being right now because we've seen this act before from Pittsburgh. They get a win and they look like the world is on their shoulders, and then they hit the bottom, crash like the stocks of Enron, and then the world is out to get them. So this division is still far from over. It's still a two-team race between Baltimore and Pittsburgh, although Pittsburgh has a slight edge due to a easier schedule, although they have a division tilt in Cleveland in a few weeks, and we know the Browns have won, I think, two of the last three over there. So that's not a gimme by any imagination. Plus, Pittsburgh has to go to Detroit. That's also not a gimme. But consider what Baltimore has, having to go to Cincinnati, host New England, and travel to Green Bay. They're staring at 3 straight losses. It's going to be a wild ride to the end of the AFC North title. So somebody will win this by default and get a default home game. Don't know who's going to be yet. Right now, Pittsburgh looks like the favorites, but they got a big win yesterday. We're talking about the performance of the defense, the big interception by James Pierre to set up a late first half touchdown that basically, in hindsight, sealed it. So Pittsburgh's running good right now. At Baltimore, you're just clinging. There's going to be a lot of craziness in the offseason, the AFC, especially with Baltimore. I'll touch on the AFC offseason show when the offseason comes. Because I've itched the AFC narrative in the offseason is going to be wild with how some of this is going. And speaking of the AFC, right now the team nobody wants to see is the Houston Texans. And I don't blame anybody. Look at that defense. They just went after Patrick Mahomes and made life terrible. Held Mahomes to 160 yards passing. Mahomes threw 3 picks, made Mahomes look human. And we're talking about what the Texans defense did, just putting the lockdowns on this Chiefs offense. Now, granted, the Chiefs offense hasn't been great over the last few weeks, but this Texans defense is rolling. And when you have 2 edge rushers, the caliber of Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. on the outside, good luck trying to stop that. And you have the cheap shot ad artist Aziz Al-Shahir helping out with cheap shots. That's going to make the defense a lot better. But still, those 2 edge rushers, Hunter and Will Anderson, is going to make life terrible. And a secondary who matches up well with any wide receiver core in the NFL. And they're real hot going in. and they're just a game behind Jacksonville for the AFC South title, which they were paid to win the division this season. They could come back and steal it out of nowhere. I don't know who wants to face Houston in the first round, because that in an offense league, if you have an established defense like Houston has, good luck trying to score points, because they're putting clamps on anybody right now. And D'Amico Ryans is just has that defensive side just playing ball at the highest level. They might just steal the AFC South, and they're going to be the favorites moving forward. And as I've always said, it's jury still on Jacksonville. I'll touch on them here in a second. Joe touched on that right now. Speaking of them, they got to win over the Colts. Not much to write about. I mean, the story of the game is, of course, why Daniel Jones was playing. You have a cracked fibula, and you're putting a guy out there, and now he has an Achilles injury, and he's done for the season. And now word broke a half an hour ago, you're going to call 44-year-old Philip Rivers off the couch. It's desperate times in Indy. It's sort of a sad story, because Daniel Jones was having a bit of a resurrection after his debacle with the Giants. Granted, he's crapped a bit the last couple of days. But we talk about now struggling to find a quarterback, and you already know that the defense is already gearing up for Jonathan Taylor. It's not a sign of good things to come for the Indianapolis Colts, who was 8-1 at one point, and some people thought they were the slam dunk to represent the AFC after 9 games, and after they traded for Sauce Gardner. Now the wheels are starting to fall off. Now you're going to call 44-year-old Philip Rivers off the couch for quarterback. And you already have Anthony Richardson, and we know the saga with that one over there, and this is terrible. But when you talk about the Indianapolis Colts, the free fall, it's unfortunate, but it's reality of the NFL. That's why you shouldn't have played Daniel Jones on Sunday. Should have probably played Anthony Richardson. When you have a cracked fibula, and that happens, that's what happens at the end of the day. It's unfortunate, but that's the reality of the NFL. And it's egg all over the Colts' face right now. And we talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. All of a sudden, they have a solid defense, and they're first in the AFC South. Granted, the jury is still out on Trevor Lawrence. And I said, well, I'm not sold on a guy because I thought he got a contract that he'd never deserved to begin with. But the Jacksonville Jaguars are leading the South for now. Houston's coming up their tails and coming up hard. But they're winning games, and they're going to probably sneak into a wild card spot virtual by default more than anything else, just largely because of how the AFC is wound up right now. But you got to give them credit for winning. They're winning, and they're doing something right. Just like how Chicago was doing the same thing in the NFC. Jacksonville's doing it in the AFC with a quarterback that nobody trusts, but a team that's just finding ways to win. That's Jacksonville right now. You got to give them that. And speaking of Chicago, yesterday, they laid an egg in Green Bay. I mean, the story here is against the two winningest teams in that division, Green Bay and Detroit, the Bears are 0-2, and that's probably the stat that matters right now. And for them to try and make the jump to the next level, it was a erratic performance, especially for Caleb Williams, who threw the pick 6 early, and then another one where he especially when he threw the interceptor right to the defender. And it shows you why nobody was trusting Chicago at this point. They're winning games, and they're going to probably get a wild card spot in the NFC, but nothing more than that. Because Green Bay's still going to win the division. Detroit still not out of it. They could probably surpass Chicago. But they say devil's magic. It ran out yesterday. And you can't have devil's magic when you're playing a great, consistent team like the Green Bay Packers, who basically delivered on all 3 phases, especially Jordan Love, who's just been playing phenomenal football over the last couple weeks and is keeping up here. And we talk about Green Bay taking ahead of the NFC North after really a weird start to the season where they looked less than stellar against the bottom barrels of the league, like losing to Cleveland and barely beating Arizona and Cincinnati, among others, to come back with this. Now, they control their own destiny to win the NFC North, the division they're favored to win. Actually, they were favored to win before the season started and before Micah Parsons' trade. But Green Bay is controlling their own destiny. Chicago's magical wins stopped yesterday. And you can't be that erratic when you're trying to get to the next level because a good team like Green Bay will exploit it, and that's what happened. So big win for Green Bay. Great game-sealing interception by Keyshawn Nixon, who just picked off Caleb Williams. Yeah, the defense sort of let the foot off the gas, but I think moving forward, there's not going to be a problem. I expect Green Bay to keep rolling as they start to march to control of the NFC North, but I think they're going to wind up winning here in a couple of weeks. And it's Seattle over Atlanta. The story here was that's why they made the trade for Rashid Shaheed, and he just went for a 100-yard kickoff return, and the game was over. That defense under Mike Macdonald is just lights out. That front seven just doing damage right now, and that's why they're going to be pegged as a NFC favorite. Big tilt coming up next Sunday, where they where they host the Los Angeles Rams for more than likely the NFC West title. And that defense is still cooking. Remember, they gave LA all they can handle the last time. Sam Darnold couldn't stop throwing interceptions. When they go to Seattle will probably be the favorite, and I think they may win and take the NFC West. I mean, the biggest mistake Baltimore made was not moving Mike Macdonald from defensive coordinator to head coach and letting this guy walk to Seattle while the Ravens just free fall on hard times this season. And look at what Seattle's done. They basically just gotten rid of a dark cloud over the last couple of years, especially with Geno Smith, brought in Sam Darnold, made Jackson Smith-Njigba one of the premier offensive weapons in the NFL, retooled that defense through the draft and free agency. We talk about DeMarcus Lawrence and drafting Byron Murphy out of Texas. Seattle's cooking right now. Yes, they had that loss to the Rams, but they're cooking. And I expect when they go back to Seattle in the rematch, Seattle's going to take care of business against the Rams. Mike Macdonald should be a candidate for the coach of the year. Well, I think it'll probably be awarded to Mike Vrabel of New England. I get it. But I expect Macdonald to get some votes. He deserves some consideration for that award. Big win on the road for Seattle, traveling cross country. And this one I'm going to touch on for a minute before I divulge to what happened yesterday in Buffalo. It was, because everybody wants to be in their hood pub about this, it was the Titans over the Browns. Everybody's talking about what Shedeur Sanders did. You guys are so obsessed with stats. He didn't win the game. I don't care how many yards you throw. You don't win a game, you're irrelevant. That's Shedeur Sanders right now. Until he starts winning games, he's irrelevant. I mean, he has the stats, but that's it. It doesn't lead to wins. It doesn't lead to anything else. It got stats, but it didn't get to wins. I mean, if he would have won that game yesterday, people will be giving him his roses. You can put up all the stats you want, but if you're not winning games, you don't deserve your credit. And that's what we had with this. So, but Tennessee is going to get the number 1 overall pick still because they're, as Cam Ward eloquently say, keep it a buck where you can fit the word after that. So and that's what they are. And they'll probably be that way for a while because Tennessee needs torn and rebuilt after a few years back when they were an AFC favorite and then the whole building collapsed on them. But they got the win against Shedeur Sanders who just put up empty stats and was unable to get a win. That's what it comes down to. And real quick, back to that Thursday night game. Solid home win for Detroit. Game was the epitome of what Dallas is. Just when you think you're ready to believe in them, they find a way to let you down. And that's what happened to Dallas. They were rolling. Then they go to Detroit. George Pickens with some odd behavior in that particular game. Pittsburgh fans can tell you about that. But big win for Detroit to stay in the NFC wildcard hunt, which is fully loaded right now. And I mean fully loaded. So that's all of that. Now to what took place yesterday. And lots to uncork because the ripple effect is carried over today. Well, let's start with this. Anybody who thinks Joe Burrow is as good or is better than Josh Allen needs to check for CTE because he isn't. Because you saw the difference between the two. I mean, one's a phenomenal quarterback. The other guy, if he wants to put on a Superman cape, he can do it. And that's what Josh Allen did. And that's why Buffalo's going to get one of those wild card spots. And if they get it, I don't want to see them because Josh Allen is that one man who can wreck a playoff run. Yes, his history doesn't show it, but if Kansas City doesn't make it, what other hurdle do they have? So that's the difference right there. One guy was good enough to make plays to win games, but his opposing quarterback was great enough to put on a Superman cape and do a lot of carrying, and that's what he did in the second half. I mean, kudos to the Bills. They won that thing fair and square. A colossal game. But we know the real story of this one. The cowardly interception by Joe Burrow right to Christian Benford is one of the most inexcusable head-scratching plays in NFL history you could ever do. Question I have is, did he have a brain lapse, or was he concussed on the field to make that kind of a throw? It's one of the most cowardly and dumb things you could ever do, and that's what Joe Burrow did Sunday at Buffalo, right to Christian Benford. I mean, the ideology makes sense, but you just soft to hand it right to Christian Benford, cowardly and really effortlessly. And because of that, the wheels fell off. Yes, Burrow threw a second interception, but I'm not pinning the second interception on Joe Burrow because the defensive lineman read that perfectly and batted the ball, and it was whole hell break loose. I mean, I'm not going to fault Joe Burrow for the second one. No way. I mean, some people are, but I'm not. The first one was one of the 5 worst interceptions for touchdowns you'll ever see any quarterback throw at any level. And I thought Lamar Jackson threw a stupid one against Cincinnati, where they're in the goal line, which is right in the hands of Cedric Johnson. This one, maybe all-time level, and we're talking all-time level, cowardly, dumb plays by an elite-level quarterback, and I mean cowardly and dumb, simply because it had no business being made. That sort of thing, take a sack, throw it away, just don't do anything that stupid. You had the game under control, and granted, the play calling after you was up 28-18 got a little soft. I get it. But to do something that cowardly at that point of the game, what Joe Burrow did on that pick 6 of Christian Benford, says a lot and more than people think. And once again, we have the cowards known as the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media trying to give Joe Burrow a pass, which is something they've done over the last 4 years, for one of the most dumb plays you could ever make in NFL history. There's a reason why you guys have been failures since you lost the 2022 AFC title game to Kansas City. It's due to the cowardice of the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media. And defending Joe Burrow on that pick 6 of Christian Benford is Exhibit A. Nobody can defend that one. I don't care what quarterback it is. I don't care if you like the guy or you hate the guy. If you're trying to defend that play, you're a bona fide coward, and you're a bona fide enabler, enabling this thing to happen. Now, the crash out all over the place on the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media today about that play has just been all over the mess. I mean, it spazzed out so bad. It's like the aftermath of the Hindenburg disaster from way back when. And the Bengals fans, I thought they would crash back worse than Enron. They resorted to Hindenburg levels when it comes to crash out. Never thought I'd say that. And we know what happened with Hindenburg once upon a time. The Bengals fans went that far when it comes to crash outs. To go that kind of a crash out to try and defend a cowardly play like that had no business taking place says more about you. And we've hashed enough conversations about the cowardice of Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media. But once the season is over and you're eliminated from the playoffs, the karma is going to come hard, because I told you guys this season it was Super Bowl or bust, where you got your top 3 guys paid top dollar, and you fail to capitalize. No excuses. All your excuses are done. I don't want to hear about bad defense. I don't want to hear about Joe Burrow's injury. I don't want to hear about Zach Taylor. I don't want to hear about ownership. Those excuses have been done the day you guys signed the contract. And when you guys went to the Super Bowl, Super Bowl 56, when you lost to LA, that bar was risen. And once you raise that bar, you better at least get to that bar or find a way to exceed it, because if you don't, it's going to look real bad. And ever since you guys lost Super Bowl 56, you guys crashed and burned and become a bigger disaster than Hindenburg, whose stocks are worse than Enron, and found a way to sink just as bad as a Titanic once upon a time. And oh, by the way you guys are collapsing right now, I mean, not even the Berlin Wall collapsed that bad. That's how bad the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media have fallen big time. Everything that's happened over the last 4 years falls on them. And how they're defending a cowardly play by Joe Burrow, which wound up in the hands of Christian Benford on a play that made no sense, said it all right there about that fan base. End of conversation. I'll deal with that part when the season is over, because I'm looking forward to putting the final nail in this coffin, and I'll just save it for then. But on some other stuff, the one good thing they did today, which is probably about maybe six weeks past its expiration date, was sending Jermaine Burton out the door. They said that's 6 weeks past its expiration date. But remember when Zach Taylor was pumping his fist and pounding the table like he got his man? Yeah, that doesn't look good right now, because Nick Saban told you guys, Nick Saban told everyone, the Bengals fans, the Cincinnati media, and Zach Taylor, this guy's going to cut it because he doesn't have the attitude. He was the same way when he was at Alabama, and you had him for third-round draft pick last year, barely played, didn't even take a snap this season, probably set the record for most healthy scratches in NFL history, and now you finally just disposed of him, which is probably about 6 weeks past his expiration date. Should have been done a lot earlier. And back to that Bengals-Buffalo game, 1 more minute. This needs to be touched on. T. Higgins, out of the concussion protocol. First time he hits his head, he goes back to the tent, but back out there, and he hits his head 2 separate other instances, and is still playing. And now today they find out he's still having concussions-like symptoms, and the Bengals put him back in the concussion protocol. Talk about blatant mismanagement of your one of the guys you broke the bank for. That's blatant mismanagement. How in the world, after a guy hits his head 3 separate times, and you know the guy just got out of a concussion protocol, you're still sending this guy on the field? I mean, the other wide receiver, the professional spitter, quit Sunday in Buffalo, and the only other player other than T. Higgins that showed up was Mike Gesicki. But that guy just came out of the concussion protocol, hit his head 3 times, and you can still wanted this guy to play. And now the NFLPA just came out and basically made a statement saying, after all of that, and the guy saying he's had concussion-like effects, they're putting him back in the protocol. If I'm T. Higgins, I'm not playing another down this season. I am not. Because, well, let's start with this. You're not going anywhere. I mean, you might win the last 4 games, but you're going to be 8-9. That's the ceiling. I'm not playing another down until I'm fully healthy, because the incompetence, negligence, and cowardice of the Bengals fans, the Cincinnati media, and the Bengals organization, all 3 put together, to put an individual who's already had concussion protocol trips, hit his head 3 times, and was taken to the tent for the same thing, and still playing and balling out. I mean, he balled out. You got to give him that. He balled out. Says tons about, once again, the character of the Bengals fans, the Cincinnati media, and the Bengals organization. If I'm T. Higgins, I'm not playing another down this season. I don't care what anybody says, because you're not going anywhere. You have your whole life and your whole career ahead of you. Why take the risk? I mean, they saw the same thing a few years ago when Miami went to Cincinnati, and that Thursday night, so you know the story of that one. Tua turned the ball over with his head on the middle of the Bengals logo with his fingers crossed inside out after he came out of the concussion protocol. But I said a bigger issue has always been the lack of consistency across the NFL board when it comes to the concussion protocol. Because I can point to a player named Denzel Ward in Cleveland who goes in, gets out, comes in, and gets out. And then we have guys like Tua and T. Higgins. The second they can get out, their respective teams send them out, and we have this. Everything is just a mess when it comes to the concussion protocol, because there's no level field, there's no consistency across the board. And of course, it's a mitigated disaster, a Hindenburg disaster for the Bengals fans and the Cincinnati media to have T. Higgins on the field, because they knew he was out of the concussion protocol, and to have that done to him 3 times, and you wanted him to play? What are you trying to do? Paralyze a guy? Says lots about you at the end of the day. I'm T. Higgins. I'm not playing another down this season. It's not worth it. And lastly, to conclude this disaster, Trey Hendrickson going to whatever the frick he's going to do in Philadelphia for surgery. Done for the season. Probably never wearing the Bengal uniform ever again. The greatest free agent signing in franchise history when they picked him up in 2020 and just carried a mediocre roster during his time here. And that's why he's having surgery, because his body fell out. That's what happened. His body fell out because he had to carry a mediocre roster. And the guy did the owner's work. You got to tip your hat off to him. Last 2 seasons, 35 sacks. Overall, 22, 35. Want to finish with 61 sacks. Just a terrific 5-year run over here. Unless they choose to franchise him, which I doubt it. It's probably the end. Not taking another snap in the end. Cincinnati Bengals probably going to take a snap somewhere else. And for all the cowards that want to accuse Trey Hendrickson of quitting, Trey Hendrickson carried your roster with a mediocre, less than mediocre defense, a barely better than mediocre offense. It won as many games as he possibly could on himself. That's what Trey Hendrickson was. And you have to salute him. And he was just a man amongst boys, because we had a lot of boys and babies over here. And Trey Hendrickson carried those and did a phenomenal job for the 5 years here. And you just have to say, thank you, Trey. Accusing him of quitting is one of the most cowardly acts anybody in the Bengals fan base and the Cincinnati media could do, because he never had to go through what this guy's gone through, because Trey Hendrickson's body fell out for having to carry a less than mediocre defense and a barely better than mediocre offense and a barely better than mediocre head coach. That's Trey Hendrickson. That's the warrior. Never complained. Battled on the field. He was a man. If this is it, thank you, Trey Hendrickson. And stop with the quitting accusations. You don't have a leg to stand on. That took care of that with the NFL segment. Now, I'm going to go outside the box a little bit. I'm going to touch on some college football. And shout out to all you guys who are fans of the Indiana University. Job well done Saturday night. I mean, that defense just lights out. I mean, they were lights out all year long. I mean, they took it to a next level, finding a way to at least slow up those 2 talented receivers of Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith Jr. of Ohio State. And really confused Justin Sand for the most part, and took away the run game. And offensively, they weren't necessarily great, but they managed to make just enough plays without Omar Cooper Jr. to get the win. I mean, they were the story all year long. And basically, they just went in there on house money, because everything was pointing at Ohio State, especially after Ohio State finally got that hurdle, beating Michigan last week. And many thought Ohio State was going to carry it over. Indiana rose to the occasion and put the clamps on them on defense and made just enough plays on offense to keep the defense off balance to get the win. I mean, no one's going to mistake this for to be the 2019 LSU or Cam Newton's Auburn Tigers, but they made just enough plays to get it done. Fernando Mendoza right now is the favorite to win the Heisman, whether everybody likes it or not. And maybe the greatest football story at any level, high school, college, or pro, however you want to name it, that's going to be told over the next 20 to 25 years from today. And you're going to I won't even be around to see the documentaries. I'm getting up there myself. The greatest story ever told in football history will be told many years down the line, how Curt Cignetti gradually built this Indiana program from the ground up. And now they have a power, not just in the conference of the Big Ten, but all in the nation and in all of college football. And you got to tip your hat off to him, because for the longest time, Indiana was forever a basketball school, especially under the years under the late Bobby Knight. We know how that went. Over the last few years, he's made that program a football school. And for him to rise that program to where it was before he came to a national power now, says tons about Curt Cignetti. And he's probably going to win every Coach of the Year award you could probably name for the season, because he did the job. Now, what's going to happen in the college playoff? I'll touch on that when it comes time. But Curt Cignetti deserves a boatload of credit, because for what he did over the last few years in Indiana since being hired, to make them a power, not just in the Big Ten, but in the entire nation. Over the next several years, it's going to be the greatest football story ever told, because he done something, brought a lot of magic, and turned really a basketball dominant school now into a football school, and now they're rocking over there at Hoosier University. I don't know what will be the football version of Hoosiers, but that's where you guys need to go right now. Actually, I'll call you guys Indiana Cignettis, because that's the impact Curt Cignetti has done. In all respect, needs to be given. Now, I'm not going to say they're going to win it all, because I haven't seen the bracket yet, but they got it. They deserved it. You could probably say they were the best team from start to finish. Maybe the best thing that happened to them going into this Big Ten game against Ohio State was they had a couple times where they were tested, especially against Penn State when they were down and Mendoza had the pass in the clutch to Omar Cooper Jr. with like 6 seconds left. If you have a game where you push to the limit and you win, it's going to help you in the long run, and that's what happened with Indiana. They're going to be a problem in the college football playoff. Don't know about win it all. Lots to take in consideration, but they have to be a favorite. Stories like that need told more. And you want to talk about writing your own chapter in history that's going to be remembered for a long time? Curt Cignetti is doing that. Props to him. Now, speak on the opposite end, we have two of the more degrading and cowardly collegiate fan bases running their mouths like a bunch of useless babies who haven't been fed and don't deserve to be fed. And we're talking the universities of Notre Dame and Texas. Well, let's start with Notre Dame first. I got lots to talk about with this one, because you guys have your panties all up in a bunch. All you had to do was beat Miami. That's all you had to do, was beat Miami, and you didn't. Now, of course, there's a part where you're independent and you're not a part of any conference. That's another story. I probably have to have a whole hour show to discuss, because I don't know much about that myself. All you had to do was beat Miami, and you didn't. It's simple. Doesn't matter about you. The thing you deserve it over Alabama, because, that doesn't mean anything. I mean, Alabama got to a SEC title game where they had they're wet-handed than them by Georgia, but still they were more deserving of the CFB playoff over than you guys, and you guys don't have a leg to stand on when it comes to this, because all you had to do was beat Miami. That was it. All you had to do was beat Miami, and because you didn't, you're on the outside looking in, and you got exactly what you deserve. You can take your 90,000 Bible scriptures and throw them at me. I don't care, because you guys got what you asked for. Karma came knocking on your door because you want to carry yourself like the biggest bunch of babies over there in South Bend, and now you got what you deserve. And mind you, you guys last season paid Northern Illinois over $1 million to play on your turf, and Northern Illinois took the money and beat you on your turf. Every time you say anything like that, karma comes and you get it, and it was richly deserved that Notre Dame didn't get into the college playoff because of the cowardice of the Notre Dame students, the Notre Dame AD, and of course, the Notre Dame students. And also, it doesn't help when you guys said you're not going to accept a bowl bid. Talk about being sore losers. Good grief. I mean, and you find a way to be worse than Bengals fans. That says a whole lot. We don't want to accept a bowl bid. You didn't want to accept a bowl bid, and because of it, you guys chickened out and you guys quit. All because you were butthurt. You didn't make the college playoff. A college playoff you didn't deserve, because all you had to do to get in was beat Miami, and you couldn't. That's all it came down to. All you had to do was beat Miami. That was it. You couldn't beat Miami. I still don't know why you couldn't beat Miami first. I still don't know why you think that shouldn't matter. And I still know why you think you guys really deserve the college football playoff despite losing to Miami, and why you think you deserved it over Alabama legitimately. Nobody in Notre Dame can explain that. Congratulations. Karma came knocking on your door. You got exactly what you deserved. Don't blame anybody else for your mistakes. You guys say the ACC did permanent damage to you. Notre Dame, you did permanent damage to yourself. You made that bid. Shut your mouth, wipe the tears off your eyes, and go lie in it. Because nobody, including me, is feeling sorry for you. Good riddance. That's one of you is out the door. And the second one out the door, I did this last week, and I'll go ahead and do it again because somebody from Texas wanted to try to sneak into my personal stuff. Don't think I seen it because I got a notification. Yes, somebody from Dallas, Texas, a Texas Longhorn fan, got offended by what I had to say and tried to hack into my stuff. Now I got to counter it. Yeah, Texas, you got eliminated from the playoff, and you deserved it too. Why? You got 3 strikes. You weren't man enough to beat Ohio State. You couldn't tell me why. You quit, keyword quit, against Georgia. You tell me why. And you couldn't beat a 3-8 Florida team who was every bit the disaster that Hindenburg was this season and fired their head coach. You couldn't beat Georgia. There's 3 strikes. You're out. You got what you deserved. Don't come to me or anybody because you had your 3 strikes. You weren't man enough to beat Ohio State. You quit against Georgia, and you lost to a 3-8 Florida team who fired their head coach. You got what you deserved also. You got a fake Manning as your quarterback. Keyword being fake Manning. As I said before, you got a problem with it. You can take your excuses and go down south. You guys can go down south and stay down south because that's where you belong. And nowhere near the college playoff bracket because you didn't deserve it. I don't care what you did at Texas A&M later in the season because losing to Florida and quitting against Georgia was basically the end-all be-all. You and Notre Dame could have this pool of tears and probably set the Guinness Book of World Records for ordering Kleenexes to wipe the tears off your eyes because neither of you two made the college football playoff when neither of you deserved it. Enjoy the tears, and it would be just a beautiful thing for you. Just enjoy your tears and just tell all the sad stories, how you felt victimized, playing narcissism, as both you institutions like to do, because karma came at both of you guys' door, and you got exactly what you deserve. And it was wonderful. And Texas, don't go Notre Dame and quit on a bowl because you would look even worse. You're already crying about getting in the not getting in the college playoff bracket. You didn't deserve it. As I said, 3 strikes. You quit against Ohio. You quit against Georgia. You weren't man enough to beat Ohio State. Lost to 3-8 Florida. 3 strikes. You're out. And stay out. Don't even talk about the college football playoff this season. And just go down south. End of conversation. Before I touch on the world of boxing, got to throw some baseball out here. Because once again, the baseball voters showed their true colors once again. Jeff Kent, who's supposed to have the most homers as a second baseman in baseball history, gets the nod over Dale Murphy, who's long overdue for the Hall of Fame. I don't know why he isn't by now. And the longtime stand-up from the Yankees, Don Mattingly, who also should be in. And I'm going to exclude all the steroid stuff because that's another topic. But I'm going to point out one person. I know what this is all about. And this is something everybody misses. One thing everybody misses with this. You remember Jeff Kent was once teammates with Barry Bonds with the San Francisco Giants. And anybody, especially the Giants fans back then, knew how the relationship was between Kent and Bonds, excuse me. Everybody knows what the relationship was between Bonds and Kent. Very, very topsy-turvy. And, of course, a sticky point was a shoving match in the dugout where Bonds just shoved Kent across the dugout, had to be separated by Dusty Baker. We know the baseball intelligentsia always hated Barry Bonds for whatever reason. I'm going to exclude that stuff because that's another topic. But just in general, the baseball intelligentsia was always rubbed off the wrong way by Barry Bonds. And they had a media darling love for Jeff Kent. And because they knew of the dark cloud around Barry Bonds, that's why they put Jeff Kent in the Baseball Hall of Fame as a way to stick it to Barry Bonds. That's why it was. We know it. We know Jeff Kent and Barry Bonds never had the greatest of relationships when they were teammates in San Francisco. Of course, the capper was the shoving match at the dugout. But the biggest reason why Jeff Kent was in the Hall of Fame wasn't because he deserved it, because he really doesn't. He's one of the biggest douchebags in baseball history. He was in it because the baseball intelligentsia liked him, and because as much as they loved him, they disliked Barry Bonds, and they used Jeff Kent going into the Hall of Fame as a way to stick it to Barry Bonds, as if to say, we love this guy more than you. And it goes back to their years in San Francisco, and everybody knows the story with that one. That's why Jeff Kent went into the Hall of Fame, because to stick it to Barry Bonds. You can't tell me otherwise. There's a lot of topics about Barry Bonds. I might use the platform for it because it's too much to divulge into. But the reason why, there's the number one reason why Jeff Kent got into the Hall of Fame today. It's simply because the baseball intelligentsia loved him, despised Barry Bonds, and used this as a way to tell those who like Barry Bonds, we like this guy and we despise Barry Bonds, and we're going to stick it to you. That's why Jeff Kent is in the Hall of Fame. Now, of course, the question is, did he deserve it over Don Mattingly or Dale Murphy? More than likely not. I mean, Murphy should have been in long before today. Why he isn't, I don't know. Same reasons why Dave Parker wasn't in. And of course, Don Mattingly, same with Dale Harper. He should be in. They just put Jeff Kent in to stick it to Barry Bonds. Let's just end it like that. Everybody in the baseball community knows the baseball intelligentsia always despised Barry Bonds and had immediate love for Jeff Kent because Jeff Kent never bought into Barry Bonds' act. And because of it, the baseball intelligentsia turned to a love affair with Jeff Kent and despised Barry Bonds even more. And today, they use it as a way to stick it to Barry Bonds by saying, we're putting this guy in the Hall of Fame over you, even though he doesn't deserve it, because we love Jeff Kent when you guys were in San Francisco. That's why Jeff Kent is in the Hall of Fame, unfortunately. There's, of course, the Mattingly and the issue with Dale Murphy and Don Mattingly. That's another topic for another day. Those two should have been in a long time ago. I don't know why they're not. I swear, I deal the same thing with the boxing fraternity when it comes to their Hall of Fame process. Might be time to talk about the same thing with the baseball fraternity for many, many reasons. And no, I'm not talking about that dark cloud with all of those players that starts with the letter S. We know what that is. I'm just talking about in general. And today, it was a case of the baseball intelligentsia giving Barry Bonds the middle finger once again. Now to the world of boxing. Overseas, it was Jaya Pataya, big win over the weekend. Called out for a unification fight with Zurdo Ramirez, but we know Zurdo Ramirez has no balls. He's a fake Julio Cesar Chavez, a fake Canelo Alvarez. Now, of course, he's going to fight the fake light heavyweight champ David Benavidez, being Zurdo. Jaya Pataya is being blackballed, and we know it. Okay? He's being blackballed. He should be the one getting the fights with Benavidez, Zurdo, Turviev, whoever. But he's not. Because they know what this guy is and what he's made of. And none of those guys have the balls to fight Jaya Pataya. Plain and simple. You can point to whatever reason for it. None of them have balls. That's what it comes down to. Nothing in that division means anything until you fight and beat Jaya Pataya. And until somebody fights and beats Jaya Pataya, it doesn't matter. Just want to get that out of the way. I said top 7 pound for pound of the world, top 7, top 8, almost by default, because after Usyk, Inoue, Bam Rodriguez, 4 through 10, take your pick. Good luck with that. Now we go to the historical aspect tonight. It was on this day, actually over the weekend. Maybe the worst decision in heavyweight championship boxing history took place at Madison Square Garden. It was the first of 2 fights with Jersey Joe Walcott going against Joe Louis. Joe Louis is coming to the end of his heavyweight title reign. Jersey Joe Walcott getting his first title shot. And story of this one is Jersey Joe Walcott gave Joe Louis everything he can handle and then some. He got the early knockdown due to the early combination by Walcott. Winning the first, really the worst 4 rounds, keeping Louis at bay, not letting Louis get off with the big bombs that he likes to. Of course, the 4th round knockdown where Louis walks into another counter right hand. as the fight was going on, Lewis was starting to turn it up. But as he was turning it up, Jersey Joe Walcott continued with the answers and appeared on the surface to be a win for Jersey Joe Walcott to become the undisputed heavyweight champion in the one belt era. But we know how that is. 2 judges scored it for Lewis. 1 judge scored it for Walcott. And Joe Lewis, some way, somehow, leaves Madison Square Garden with a split decision win. It was widely considered the worst decision in heavyweight championship boxing history, maybe recently superseded by the first Lennox Lewis-Evander Holyfield fight in 1999. But a top 5 robbery, no doubt, because Joe Lewis was on his decline, obviously, especially after his time in World War II and after he hit that pedestal when he beat Max Schmeling. Slowly started his downturn, and you had a feeling it was going to happen. And we talk about how he escaped. Makes you wonder. Because Jersey Joe Walcott, we talk about the ability to turn, use his shoulder, counter right hand. He did that all night, especially the one counter right hand off the shoulder roll that set up the second knockdown. And because of it, that's how Jersey Joe Walcott had success, except in the eyes of one of the judges and the referee. Now, mind you, back then, it was 2 judges and the referee scoring the fight. Some way, somehow, Jersey Joe Walcott was victimized. It was so bad, Joe Lewis told everybody, Jersey Joe Walcott won the fight. I was not myself. And basically went over and apologized to Jersey Joe Walcott after the fight, which shows you the great humanitarian Joe Lewis is. I mean, that's what he was. And America betrayed him for many reasons. But he showed the world why he was a top-class humanitarian, even though he was awarded the decision win and was able to retain his title on that long reign of 20. This was his 24th successful title defense. Just acknowledging defeat and basically saying Jersey Joe Walcott had my number today says more about who Joe Lewis was. And Joe Lewis just was not himself. I mean, Jersey Joe Walcott beat him to the punch. Every exchange Joe Lewis tried to put on Walcott, Jersey Joe Walcott met him punch for punch. Jersey Joe Walcott did everything and anything he wanted to do Joe Lewis. But the judges said otherwise. And you're talking about arguably the worst decision in heavyweight championship boxing history. Cuba being heavyweight championship, not overall because others top that. Just the fact that, Joe Lewis acknowledged it says a lot. Now, a year later, prompted it to a rematch where Jersey Joe Walcott was doing the same thing for the most part to Joe Lewis until a mistake by Jersey Joe Walcott, and Joe Lewis just found it and just teed off with right hands till Jersey Joe Walcott hit the floor and could not beat the count. But the first of these 2 fights that took place over 80 years ago at Madison Square Garden was a case of basically boxing negligence, because there's no other way to describe how badly Joe Lewis, back up, it was boxing negligence because of how badly Jersey Joe Walcott was robbed, and he was robbed rather badly. There's no other way to sugarcoat it. There's no other way to dice it up. But that's what led to the rematch. And probably Joe Lewis's last great performance wiped out Walcott. Walcott, of course, regrouped to have a terrific 4-fight series with Ezra Charles, where he eventually won the last 2 to become the heavyweight champ. And, of course, a terrific fight against Rocky Marciano. Not talked about enough as an all-time great heavyweight is Jersey Joe Walcott. Certainly up there. A resume as good as anyone. I mean, he really went 1-1 against Joe Lewis. And, of course, lost the first 2 to Ezra Charles and came back to win the next 2. And the first of the 2 fights against Marciano gave him everything he can handle. Underrated heavyweight, old school throwback. We talk about the shoulder roll, the ability to slip and counter. That's what made Jersey Walcott successful. And that's how he really, really won this fight against Joe Lewis the first time. But the judges didn't give it to him. Joe Lewis basically said, this guy was better than me today. And we don't see that anymore. Joe Lewis basically just told it like it was. And Jersey Joe Walcott accepted it. That should tell you about the humanitarian that Joe Lewis was. And as I said before, we talk about Joe Lewis, probably the most unbreakable record in boxing history. 12 years and 25 successful title defenses. Let me remind you, 25 successful title defenses with one belt in the one belt era in one weight class. We're not going to see that again because he just didn't clean that division out once. He cleaned it out a second time after he came back from World War II. That tells you the greatness of Joe Louis. Number 2 all-time great heavyweight behind Muhammad Ali. Number 3 all-time pound for pound behind Ray Robinson and Muhammad Ali. Greatness personified. His humanitarian acts off the field, double that. A premier humanitarian in the ring and one of the premier all-time greats to ever step foot in the sports circle. I'm talking boxing. I'm talking all the sports. The great Joe Louis. Granted, he got a gift. Doesn't deter the fact the guy's still a premier all-time great. I heard somewhere, I guess, rumors are flying around. I don't know how true it's not that the president was going to finally pardon Joe Louis, which should have been done a long time ago. It would be a wonderful thing if that goes through with that. And I conclude with the more modern history, and this was brought up the other night, took place 41 years ago at the Las Vegas Hilton. It was Donald Curry with the left hook of perfection that starts Milton McCrory to become the undisputed welterweight champion in the evolution of the three-belt era. After the Four Kings was about to hit their downturn, because this came like shortly after Haile Mugabe. Well, after Mugabe, excuse me. And before Leonard Hagler. Donald Curry was about to be the it guy, and he had all the potential in the world to do it. So too was Milton McCrory. He was an undefeated champ. They say when you have two undefeated champs, you have real fights. What we had here was two champions with one guy showing the whole world why he was about to be it. Because Donald Curry was a do-it-all fighter. And we talk about what he did on this night when he just wiped out Milton McCrory in 2 rounds. We had a superstar in the making out of Fort Worth, Texas. And he was on his way. We talk about how he exploded Milton McCrory. Nothing was going to stop this guy. He won all the big fights, rightfully so. I mean, we get to that point. I mean, you want all the big guns. Ascended to the stature of the number 1 fighter pound for pound. And as a result, was a man of the moment. But the biggest mistake maybe Donald Curry made was maybe staying in that welterweight division a little too long and having to face an awkward style like Lloyd Hunnigan. And we know what happened in that fight where Hunnigan just took Curry to the cleaners. Excuse me. And on that night, we talk about Curry Hunnigan. Maybe something was exposed that nobody knows of. But when you think of what Donald Curry could have become, and like I said this a countless times about fighters, not just winning titles, but getting to the next level to successfully defend them, you need extra discipline. Donald Curry, at the end of the day, didn't have that discipline. Because you beat a guy like Milton McCrory, you get to the top, and you have everyone gunning after you. You better find a way to stay up while they're coming. Because if you don't, you're going to take the other way and the bad downturn and a bad one. And that's what Donald Curry did after this fight and losing to Lloyd Hunnigan. Of course, the rumors about management and weight prior to that fight, which goes to show you the lack of discipline Donald Curry had after the star was shining bright for Donald Curry after he obliterated Milton McCrory. He had the future in his hands. He had it all to have the distinction of undisputed champion in the 3-belt era when the undisputed meant something in the sport of boxing, and he had it. The future was bright until he lost his discipline, fought an awkward style of Lloyd Hunnigan in a fight maybe the matchmaker shouldn't have gone through with. And from that point forward, it went to the other direction, and it went to the other direction fast. Because after that, he was nowhere near that level again. Of course, a year later after this, he fought the standout junior middleweight Mike McCallum. And when McCallum starts him with that left hook in the 5th round, that flattened him for good. That tells you what happened with Donald Curry at the end of the day. It's one thing to get to the top out of nowhere, like Donald Curry did, and have everything going your way. It is. But once you get to that point, you got to keep going up. You got to keep trending up. Just because you get to that point doesn't mean you stop. You got to keep trending up. When Donald Curry knocked out Milton McCrory to become the undisputed welterweight champ, that probably was a gratification, a satisfaction, and maybe at the end of the day, just having that highlight reel knockout of McCrory and making that his personal satisfaction was probably why the rest of his career wound up the way it did. Because when you get to that point and you're content and you don't want to go to that next level, and we see like a Marvin Hagler, Julio Cesar Chavez, Pernell Whitaker, Bernard Hopkins, just to name a few. When you get to that level and you have the start right, anybody can do that. And that's what Donald Curry did when he starts Milton McCrory. But he was content and satisfied to get to that point. And because of that satisfaction and being content, that's why the Lloyd Hunnigan fight turned out the way it did. That's why the Mike McCallum fight turned out the way it did. And that's why the rest of his career turned out the way it did. Because he was just content with just having the name undisputed welterweight champion of the world and maybe not being able to go through the extra mile to maintain that high level. Because it takes something special to get that next level. And that's why Donald Curry couldn't get to that point after he demolished Milton McCrory. And the McCrory fight was basically a case of Donald Curry saying, I hit my peak. That's it. Nothing against Donald Curry, who had all of the talent in the world. There's a lot of stories about this in the fight game. We haven't. You get to that point, you got to that point. But are you satisfied with getting to that point, or do you want more? I mean, Marvin Hagler, Julio Cesar Chavez, Pernell Whitaker, Sugar Ray Leonard, Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis. Let's name some examples. They got to that level, but they wanted more. And they worked harder just to get more. Donald Curry, when he got to that point, I don't want to say he didn't want more, but he was more content and relaxed by just getting to that point when he beat Milton McCrory. And because he was content, that's why everything else wound up the way it did for him. The losses to Hunnigan and McCallum, eventually later on to other guys like Michael Nunn and Terry Norris. But still a respectable career, Hall of Famer, well-deserved. And I heard he's not the greatest of health. Hopefully, he's doing well. But certainly a phenomenal talent was Donald Curry. And we can coin the phrase talent loosely, but Donald Curry had it. But to get to a greater level, it takes extra discipline and the extra desire. Maybe Donald Curry didn't have it after he started Milton McCrory because he was just content with just being named undisputed welterweight champion, and everything else ended right there. Just a phenomenal fighter, every which way you look at it. Lots of touch on tonight. And on that note, that'll wrap up this edition of Sirhan on X. I will be back tomorrow night. If you missed this show or any other shows of the recent past, you can catch up on the iHeartRadio, the Apple Podcasts, and the Spotify apps. Soon, the rebranding that's coming up, probably within the next several weeks, this name will wrap up. A new show will come soon. Details will be launched within the next 8 days. And I tell this to everybody all the time. Always make self-care your number one priority in all walks of life. If you take care of yourself first, respect people's boundaries, defend your own boundaries, all good things will come your way. Always respect people's boundaries. Also, do not allow anyone to walk on your boundaries. If they do, defend your turf, because that's what self-care is all about. And on that note, have a good rest of the night. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and I will see you tomorrow.